On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, the Oklahoma City Thunder drop a game to the Golden State Warriors on national television. What's the common theme between all Thunder losses? What does this game mean long term and short term for Oklahoma City? And SGA drops 50 points again.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder and SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. Hopefully you make us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. Thank you if you do. And of course, you can subscribe, YouTube, any podcasting platform there is. We're here today with Brandon Rahbar at Brandon Rahbar on Twitter, dailythunder.com, and 1077 The Franchise, OKC Dream Team, where you can find both of us on Patreon. Brandon, I really appreciate you coming on for this show because it's been a long day. The Blue played at 11 a.m. in Tulsa. So I had to leave, obviously, early this morning to go to Tulsa, come back, stay up for this 9 o'clock tip, and then now we're sitting here recording this after the game. So it's great to have you here so I don't fall asleep on the air like Mike Francesa.
Yeah, that's all I'm here for. I'm just going to be kind of like an alarm clock. If I see you snoozing, you just do your show, and I'll just be here to wake you up if I see you start snoozing, okay?
That'd actually be
annoying, like say what?
That'd be a great service if you could just do that every show. And it's like if I say something dumb, you just like interject and we can fix it. Because you'd be interjecting every single sentence because I say something dumb all the time. But Brandon, we do have the Thunder losing to the Golden State Warriors to talk about. In this game, the Thunder should have won. That's plain and simple. The Warriors on the second night of a back-to-back. They did get Steph Curry back, but they didn't have Draymond. They did not have Kuminga. And the Thunder grew a 14-point lead. And in that third quarter, Golden State went on that run to wrestle away the lead. Eventually, this game saw 12 lead changes, 8 ties, and the Thunder fell short 116 to 109. And again, if the Thunder out-rebounded Golden State, they produced more turnovers, 15 to 11 than Golden State. But the big kicker is, despite having more points in the paint, more second chance points, and surprisingly, way less fast break points, the Thunder got trounced in the fast break point 18 to 5. It came down to shooting. Golden State made 49% of their shots against this historically great defense. They made just 34% of their threes and 82% of their free throws. But the Thunder made just 40% from the floor, a 9-point point differential, 23% of their threes, over 10 percentage differential, and then 80% of their free throws. And ultimately, that's the difference in this game. Clearly a frustrating loss. You can just see that from the amount of people who are cranky for staying up and watching this game. But the Thunder did go into these scoring lulls. They did have the common thread. Like, the Thunder have not lost a ton. They haven't even had 10 losses yet this season. They're still at the title favorite. They're still the title contender. They're still the West favorite. They're still the West number 1 overall seed comfortably. All that stuff remains true, while also when you only get 10 losses, 9 losses, every single one of them we put under the microscope because we just we haven't really seen this team come up short a ton to where that's whenever you naturally pick apart a roster. And as we know, Brandon, being in Oklahoma, this is a football state first and foremost. And even if this team had one loss and it was their first loss tonight, people would be thinking the sky was falling because that's how you operate in the sport of football. So all that being said, what's your initial takeaway from watching this game and seeing the Thunder lose?
My initial takeaway is the shooting. Like, I hate to just say shooting variance and chalk it up to that, but the most telling stat to me from tonight is that outside of SGA, J-Dub, and Isaiah Joe, the Thunder went 0-17 from 3. 0-17 from 3 outside of those 3 guys. And those 3 guys scored 52 points, 26 points, and 17 points. That was the entire Thunder offense tonight, was Shai, Dub, and Isaiah Joe. And we know that the Thunder role players all season long have performed well. Isaiah Hartenstein, only 4 points tonight and 2 of 10 shooting. Like that, to me, that's such an outlier performance. Lou Dort, who's been one of the best 3-point shooters on this team this season, 0-4 from 3, 2 of 8 from the field, 4 points. Cason Wallace, 0-3 from 3, 1 of 5 from the field, 2 points. You can go down the list. Jay Will was 0-4 for 2 points. Kenrich Williams, he only shot 1 time, so, but he was 0-for-1. And then Aaron Wiggins, again, he's been a great 3-point shooter the last, couple of seasons. He's in a little bit of a slump right now. He went 0-for-4 tonight from 3 for 2 points. So it really came down to that. And again, on the other side of that, we saw the Warriors hit tough shot after tough shot in that second half, like step backs, hands in their face, slow-mo, doing that slow-mo turnaround fadeaway jumper. Is some of that defense, some of that's tough shot making. They got a vintage Andrew Wiggins versus the Thunder performance. That always hurts. But kind of bottom line, when Shai scores 52 points and Steph Curry scores 21 points, you would just think that this is a runaway win for the Thunder. And it just, outside of those 3 guys, nobody could hit a shot, and that's the story of the game.
Yeah, and that's the common thread in these losses, and that's why it feels so loud, is because to beat this Thunder team, you're going to have to concede Shai for as much as you try to shut him off. And in the second half, the Warriors did lean into zone defense. They led into loading up on Shai in the paint, blitzing him, being more physical with him, sending help more often, getting the ball out of his hands, denying him the ball, and daring anyone else to beat them. And the Thunder just do not have reliable guys who can beat you night in and night out without Shai. And so that's why you see their offense stagnate when Shai's off the floor. It's why you see their offense stagnate sometimes with Shai after he gets hot early on. He had 31 points at the half. I mean, this guy was incredible tonight, and the 52 points goes a long way in showing that. And he was still in this loss a +1 in his minutes on the floor, which includes the minutes in the second half, like coming back early in the fourth quarter to try to will this win for the Thunder, and they end up losing, but he was still a positive in the plus-minus category. So when you look at the common thread losses, when they lose, which is rare, it comes down to how did the rest of these guys perform shooting the basketball. And it's a dreadful Lou Dort game offensively. Like he just was not good. And it was really from the word go for a guy who's, cut down on some bad decision-making. He shot 4 shots inside the arc, and the more attempts you get inside the arc from Lou, the worse it is. And he just was not good tonight. And there's no other way to put it. And then Cason Wallace went 0-for-3 from 3. Isaiah Joe was spectacular, but Wiggins went 0-for-4, and Jay will went 0-for-4. And Caruso, of course, got hurt a minute into the game, so that took him out of the picture. He hasn't shot the ball well this season anyway. And then Kenrich goes 0-for-1. You just didn't have anyone make a shot besides Shai, and then Dub got going late, and even him for the majority of this game left some to be the desired offensively, especially in the non-Shai minutes. And then Isaiah Joe was we'll have to spend a whole segment on how good Isaiah Joe was today, but it's kind of a two-sided coin, because the Thunder are still a historically great team by every single metric, including the eye test. For as much as you might dislike the sloppy play and the bad result from Wednesday, the eye test still says they're a great team. They've lost 9 games as we head into February. 9 games. It's just that when they lose games, it looks a lot like this, to where you believe this is their reputation. You believe that this is who they are. When in reality, this is who they are when they lose, and they win a lot more than they lose. But the other side of that coin is the end goal for this team, when you're this good, is to have success in the postseason. And frankly, it'd be difficult for this Thunder team, for as talented as they are, to blow a 5-game lead in the standings, to where you've pretty much got the 1 seed on ice, to where the rest of this regular season doesn't mean a ton, because we just know what to expect from this team when it comes to taking care of business against inferior opponents who they're going to play in the back half of the schedule, play enough of them to protect that lead on the number 1 overall seed. So the flip side of that coin is, when it's about the playoffs, and that's what everybody's looking forward to in Oklahoma City, you can't trust anyone on this roster besides Shai to hit meaningful playoff shots. And you can hope that hey, those guys came up short in their first go around. Like Jada was not good enough offensively his first go around in the playoffs. Kaysen, Wiggins, Joe, even they were not good enough in their first go around in the playoffs. But it was their first go around. Most guys aren't good in their first go around in the playoffs. So naturally, you would expect them to be better in their second opportunity in the postseason, which exactly can happen. Like we could get to the postseason and watch this team have big game Lou every single night and have Isaiah Joe do what he did tonight and have Wiggins be more comfortable. But the issue that you're seeing people have about this team is in bigger regular season games, right? Where these bigger games happen and you see the Bucks NBA Cup game, which doesn't count toward that total. And you see, the game like tonight on national television, the role players just do not look comfortable. They do not look willing to shoot. They do not look willing to, kind of extend themselves in their role when all else fails. And you can point to Andrew Wiggins in this game. You can point to PJ Washington against Dallas. You can point to all these role players you want to point to who are like, you throw your hands up and say, well, they just, they just really overperformed tonight. Well, how do you overperform? You overperform by shooting, but by taking chances, by putting yourself in position to make shots. And the overpassing and the lack of confidence, I guess you could say, from these role players is a bit alarming, to where it does open up the Pandora's box of like, well, what if you just go get a guy like Cam Johnson, who can hit big shots in the playoffs, to where I can't really push back on that notion. It's just a he said, she said type of thing right now. It's like a two-party system. You either think that this team has to go get Cam Johnson, or they're destined to flame out in the playoffs, or you think, hey, this is still a really young team, and this team can still grow, and they could surprise you with having seen the pictures in the playoffs a year ago and improving this year. I lean more into the latter camp, but it's really tough to push back on that Cam Johnson situation, which is what we're going to get to coming up next on today's Locked on Thunder podcast. But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at TurboTax, go check them out today at TurboTax. This is a message from your sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes are waiting and wondering and worrying if you're ever going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, taxes is made easy. It's matching with a TurboTax expert when you do your taxes as soon as today, an expert who gives you your taxes their undivided attention. That way they are working on it for you and for your return, while you get real-time updates on the progress that they've made, so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. By not waiting, not worrying, not wondering, you'll be able to have a more enjoyable tax season. And so now this is taxes. It's without the worrying, it's without the waiting, and without the wondering, with an expert at TurboTax.com. Go there right now, because it's only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app, and the guarantee details are at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, so we've spit a lot at you. We're back on Locked on Thunder, and it's really hard to put the pieces together. And so we kind of had to lay all that out to then get to the meat and potatoes of this conversation. Being up front, the Thunder are, in my opinion, still the favorites to go to the NBA Finals from the Western Conference. Because for as much as locally, and I say locally as in every Thunder fan, not just the ones in Oklahoma, as much as locally, like if you're watching this team all 82 games and you're watching this team every single day, you can spot like all the different blemishes for the Thunder, because there has never been a perfect team in NBA history. There will never be a perfect team in NBA history. So you can spot all the different blemishes. But guess what's happening in those other markets, right? Houston has a ton of blemishes. Denver has a ton of blemishes. Dallas, who everybody's shaking in their boots about, has a ton of blemishes. Everybody has flaws, including the Thunder. And it comes down to matchups, like who you match up better with. And it comes down to who has the fewest blemishes on their resume. And so far, that's been the Thunder, without doing anything else and without even seeing Chet Holmgren play with this team. With that being said, as we teased in the first segment, there is the element of balancing how long do you give these guys to come around, which I think is more than one postseason, versus When do you go make a microwave move to go get Cam Johnson or somebody of that ilk that you trust more in a playoff setting than the current role players on this roster for a team who, through 2 years now, has ran into the same hiccups for as good as they were a year ago, winning 57 games, for them projecting to win 63 games this year. Where do you fall on that number line, Brandon?
Well, I think the Thunder look at the big picture, and the big picture is, I know that this was a frustrating loss to the Warriors, because this Warriors team has been a 500 team and they didn't have Draymond Green. So I get that. And there's been a couple of recent frustrating losses to the Mavs. So, but the big picture is that this is still a team tied for the best record in the NBA while missing Chet Holmgren and Hartenstein missing a lot of the season, and Alex Caruso missing a lot of the season. And he missed tonight, by the way. I think that his loss was substantial tonight as well. They could have used him down the stretch. I think that big picture wise, this is a title contending team. This is one of just a handful of teams that can win the title this year. I think that there's a lot of talent. I think there's a lot of great teams, but I think there's only a handful of teams that are true contenders and can win the title. And I think the Thunder are one of them. And if the Thunder get Chet back healthy and rolling by the playoffs and assuming health for everyone else, I still think that the big picture is this team can go win a title this season. If things break the right way in the playoffs. So I think that's how the Thunder look at things, like the big picture wise. And yes, this loss is painful and it's a bummer, but they're not going to look at one loss in January and make decisions, especially I know that the role players didn't hit tonight. Over 17 from three outside of SGA, J-Dub, and Joe is bad. I mean, it just is. I get it. But they're going to look at kind of like a season-long data point. Like they're going to look at, what the role players have done all season long, how they shot at home versus away, and all those things. When you look at the big picture, this team is a team that's defense first. And Chet unlocks so many things, I think, for the offense. It's going to make things look a lot better, the space that he provides and the outlet that he provides. I don't mean to dance around the answer. The answer is I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if the Thunder are going to go out and get a Cam Johnson and make a move like that. If they don't, I understand why they don't, because this team can win a title as is, especially with Chet coming back into the fold. And, especially because if you keep this core together, the way that it's constructed with contracts and things like that, it can contend for several years down the road. But the flip side of that, I can see you looking at kind of the season-long data and saying, okay, well, we may need some more shooting. We may need, another reliable outside shooter that can go get a basket, and maybe you make a move like that. So I get both sides of it, and I have no idea what the Thunder are going to do, because this is still, bottom line, the number one team in the West without Chet Holmgren, arguably their second best player.
You're exactly right on all fronts, as always, Brandon. But when you look at this, I think that everybody has to be willing to have some common ground of, we just went through this loss and how it relates to other losses and what it means big picture, and then what it means from a micro level. Like we've done macro and micro. At the end of the day, it's one of 82. Truly is. Just like the wins are, this loss is as well. There are some common themes that have plagued them in other losses this season, which we've talked about the shooting. To me, that's the only one that's happened all year long, because I can already hear you typing away of like, this team needs another big, this team needs another table setting point guard, this team needs this and that. Okay, let's run through the needs. To me, the only need that stands up is, I can hear you if your argument is you'd rather trade, like, say, Aaron Wiggins for Cam Johnson because you trust Cam Johnson more than you trust Aaron Wiggins to make a big shot in the playoffs. And I can hear you. I don't think that they're going to do that, and I'll tell you why in a second, but I can hear that. Every other demand that this fan base has or media people have about this team, I think falls on deaf ears, because you already see it, right? This team needs another big man. Guys, can we wake up for a second? This team was never supposed to be playing J. Will. And I'm a J. Will guy, but they were not supposed to be playing him meaningful minutes, meaningful defensive minutes. He's not a good defensive center. He never has been, never will be. Frankly, a good defensive center. He's improved. defensively, that's for sure. He's not as bad as he once was, but he's still not who you want to be playing on the floor whenever games are in the balance. And you have to do that right now with only 2 healthy bigs. The team is built to have Chet and Hartenstein. And just like any other team that deals with injuries, when those injuries happen, and you hope it's not at the wrong time, right? You hope Chet comes back and he stays healthy, and you hope that Hartenstein stays healthy, and you hope that in the playoffs you have both those guys. And if you do, you no longer need another big man. Like, sure, you can go get insurance policies, as we talked about yesterday, just in case they get hurt again in the playoffs. But ideally, those 2 guys will be taking up all the center minutes. They'll be playing 48 minutes of genuine rim protection, and J-Will will not see the court very often. And if he does see the court, he'll be playing that 4 position, which is more naturally suited toward his skill set, to where it helps elevate his game as well. But the bottom line is, when push comes to shove, if you had to tell me to make a prediction today, does J-Will field a playoff minute where the game is in a meaningful stage? I would say no, if this team's fully healthy. So you're all worked up over things that do not matter. Like the J-Will minutes do not matter. Whether you love them or hate them, they do not matter. Because if this team is going to win a championship, he's not going to play because you're going to be healthy. So that's number one. Number two, another big concern is the functionality of the secondary unit, and with that comes table setting. And while that is a need that I had heading into the offseason, that is a need that after the offseason, I said it's the only thing that they didn't outright address. They've done a lot to that position, right? They've given themselves a lot of darts to throw at the dartboard. You have J-Dub progressing, which has been hit or miss this season. You have Cason Wallace being more on ball, which has been good this season. You have AJ Mitchell, who was good before he got hurt and added to the crop of injuries. And you have Caruso, who's handled some backup point guard duty in his past in the NBA. So I can hear you on another table setter, but the reason you're saying that is because there's these moments where J-Dub's not lighting the world on fire offensively. And he's not just being uber aggressive and scoring in bunches and being that fourth quarter dub that you all dubbed him as a year ago. Well, guess what? If that trend continues and he's not taking over and scoring in bunches, no matter if you have Colin Sexton or not, you're put in a hole. You're put in a pretty deep hole if that were to happen. And let's not forget, it's not a cop-out to say that Chet Holmgren returning helps J-Dub. Go look at how good those 2 guys are together. Go look at how those 2 guys complement one another. Go look at how those 2 guys play off of each other. That elevates J-Dub's game. Look at how Mark staggered those lineups last year, which got the success for J-Dub in the second quarter and the start of fourth quarters. It was with Chet Holmgren. So, I know that you get tired of hearing about Chet, but to me, it's so disingenuous to say that Chet Holmgren is this unicorn and this potential great player, and he has the highest ceiling, and he's better than this prospect, better than that prospect. And then also, whenever you're mad because the Thunder lost a game, say he's not going to fix everything. This is a 9-loss team. If Chet Holmgren is a semblance of what you think Chet Holmgren is, then he takes a 9-loss team to where? 4 losses that they'd probably have, whatever, right? Like he obviously covers up some of the blemishes that you have, and you've only had enough blemishes to lose 9 games in February. So I just think it's so disingenuous to act like Chet Holmgren isn't a big deal that can really solve a lot of these quote-unquote problems. The only one that is a tried and true problem to me is the role player shooting. And as we talked about in the first segment, it's either going to happen or it's not for the current guys. Either in their second playoffs, Lou Dort hits better from 3, Joe hits better from 3, Wiggins hits better from 3, and Cason hits better from 3, or it's much more of the same of last year, where those guys aren't willing to shoot enough, where those guys don't have outlier performances, where those guys don't even shoot passably from 3, and you lose in the playoffs, and then you go once again in the summertime and make those changes, and you collect those data points, and you can then make an informed decision. Because if you made a trade right now, you would just be waving the white flag on that possibility. But by the same time, would you rather just wave the white flag right now and get yourself a guy who you know can hit really good shot, really big shots in the playoffs? That's the concern I will grant you, and I will talk about, and I will extend. The other ones I think is way too premature, because the only other one I can think of that people really have their goat about is like the need for positional size at the 4. Well, guess what happens when, say it again with me, church, Chet Holmgren comes back, right? You can play him at the 4 next to Isaiah Hartenstein, J-Dub at the 3, and now all of a sudden you went from a very small lineup to a jumbo lineup. You just cannot, and I'll say it for the final time, diminish what Chet Holmgren is, and then at the other side of your mouth say how great he is. He'd fix a lot, Brandon.
Yeah, Chet was playing easily at an all-star level, all NBA level, defensive player of the year level before he got hurt. Like, we're talking about like a top 20 player in the NBA, small sample size when he was healthy this season, but he had taken a leap, obviously, and he just unlocks this team on both sides of the ball. The stat that I go back to, and I think tonight is a good time to bring it up, is that this Thunder team is 31-4 now when either Chet or Hartenstein play. And I would say that tonight is the first loss of those 4 losses that was a game like the Thunder should have won. Those 4 losses, one of them was at Denver by 2 points. One of them was that back and forth Cavs game on national TV. And of course, the Thunder ended up winning the next week when they had the rematch. And one of them was that Fred VanVleet game that he scored 38 points against the number 2 seed in the West, the Rockets. And VanVleet went off. Those were the 3 losses with the big coming into tonight. So I think that tonight may be extra painful because it was a game where the Thunder had a big and they probably should have won. Like, it was a game that the Thunder had the big lead. They were more talented than the Warriors team that went out there tonight. Shai goes for 52. Like, it's a game the Thunder should have won, and they would have won had the role players shot better for sure. But I think big picture, when you look at the fact that the Thunder are 31-4 with one big and how dominant that is, and those other 3 losses were all incredibly close losses to some of the top teams in the league. And then you think, okay, but they haven't played a single game with 2 bigs, and not just 2 bigs, 2 elite bigs, 2 rim protecting bigs, 2 bigs that get boards, and 1 big that spaces the floor and shoots 3. Like, Chet solved some of the 3-point shooting problem as well with his gravity, with his spacing, and just the fact that he's about a 38% 3-point shooter himself. So I get the frustration. I do. It's the Warriors. It never feels good for Thunder fans to lose to the Warriors because it's the Warriors. And it's a game that the Thunder, could have and probably should have won tonight. So I get it. But I do think big picture, this team is in very, very good shape because this has been a dominant team when they've had at least 1 big in the lineup. Like, without either big, it's tough just because the team is so fundamentally different without 1 7-footer. Like, it's just hard to play without 1 7-footer. And the fact that the Thunder have played better than 500 ball, I think they're 6-5 without one of their bigs is really impressive, quite honestly. So yeah, I'm with you, Rylan. It's I just think that in the moment, this loss is a bummer, but big picture, this team is in really good shape. But yeah, you got to hope for better 3-point shooting come the playoffs. And I think that we can expect that this was an outlier performance, because whether they're shooting great in the playoffs or whatever in the playoffs, 0 for 17 outside of SGA, Isaiah Joe, and J-Dub isn't going to happen. Like that,
on mainly wide open shots.
Yes, like that is an outlier, an anomaly, and just kind of a wild thing that happened tonight, quite honestly.
And that's why I think it comes down to comfortability. Like for whatever reason, these role players just don't seem comfortable, and they don't seem comfortable whenever the ball's forced out of Shai's hands and they're being dared to shoot and dared to beat the other team. Whereas you've ran up against role players who relish in that, like PJ Washington, when you just kept leaving him open, he relished in that opportunity. You saw Wiggins hit a tough shot. You saw Slow-Mo hit tough shots. You saw Podziemski hit tough shots. Like these guys hit tough shots, and the Thunder role players do not. And it's not to say they won't ever hit tough shots and they won't ever come through. But in moments like this, that they really, really struggle. And that's the only common thread in losses like this. So the other stuff is just really fluff about this team. Coming up, we'll break down this individual game because we've done a lot of big picture stuff, and also talk about Shai's 50-point game and Isaiah Joe's night. The Thunder are back in town on Saturday, and if you want to go to that game, you can hit up Game Time because Game Time is incredible. We all love going to live events. It's a lot better than watching at home. And so if you're looking for tickets to sporting events, movies, concerts, comedy shows, whatever the live event is, you can check out Game Time. It filters out the fluff and only shows you incredible deals on great seats. So you don't waste time searching through thousands of little tickets on the seating map to find the one for you. I also love the all-in prices. That way you toggle that feature on and boom, it shows you the exact price up front, no surprises at checkout. That way you know what you're getting into, so you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Go download the Game Time app. What time is it? Game Time. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Joining us today is Brandon Rahbar at Brandon Rahbar on Twitter, dailythunder.com, 1077 The Franchise, OKC Dream Team, where you can find both of us over there. Brandon, this game. So we've talked a lot of big picture stuff. We've obviously hammered the shooting. That is the first and foremost. You got to give credit to the Warriors because they kept fighting. They could have easily rolled over down 14 on the second night of a back-to-back for a team that's been perfectly fine being mediocre this season and now broke a game over 500 in this game. Congratulations to Golden State. And they did a better job of outfighting Oklahoma City. They did a better job of finding that meaning, rising to the occasion, hustling, all that kind of stuff that's kind of hard to identify. They did a much better job of executing. Like they did not have these dramaticized lulls where they just look stagnant and just incompetent offensively, and they hit tougher shots. They rose to the occasion in the sense of getting those backbreaker moments where it's just like you played great defense for 20 seconds, and on the 21st second they banked in a elbow turnaround fadeaway. And those shots are demoralizing. Those shots are the ones you hit to win games like this. So they gutted it out. They stuck through this game, and that deserves a bunch of credit for Golden State. So I want to make sure we get in there because I can already see some of the Warrior fans on the YouTube comments, giving us grief for not talking about this individual game. There's bigger fish to fry in Oklahoma City. But SGA, after not being able to score 50 his entire career, he got the lid off the basket in that category last week against Utah, and now does it again this week, dropping 50 points against Golden State. And he went for 52 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal on 55% shooting from the floor, Brandon, and a career high 21 free throw attempts. Are you kidding me? Like what Shai is doing is unbelievable. How do you make over half your shots and score 50?
Yeah, he was unreal tonight. And that's why I am bummed for him individually because this would have been a nice feather in the cap as far as like an MVP campaign. To score 54 last Wednesday, to score 52 tonight, and especially it was on national TV. But it comes in a loss, so bummed for him. But he individually, 16 to 29, and he carried this offense for the first half, especially. I mean, he was J-Dub and Isaiah Joe obviously had really nice scoring nights as well. But if SGA doesn't go for 50 tonight, how big of a blowout is this game? And I know that he shot a lot of free throws, but they were legit free throws. Like maybe you can argue 1 or 2 calls, but which superstar can you not argue 1 or 2 calls? The Warriors just didn't have an answer for him. They didn't have anybody to slow him down. I know Gary Payton's a good defender, but they just didn't have anybody to slow Shai down. Like Shai just hits so many tough shots, and he is just so unpredictable. And he is his scoring has gone to an unreal level this year. He's now up to 32.5 on the season after tonight. Like his scoring and the
efficiency too. Like, are you like a guard should not do this? Like, there's guard efficiency, then there's Shai efficiency. Where Shai is a guard with big man efficiency.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like when you look at his true shooting percentage, like he's doing what like centers do, because centers get lots of easy, dunks and layups and putbacks, and they're shooting from, 3 feet in a lot of times. So of course their efficiency is going to be higher. But Shai has elite center efficiency as a guard, which is just absolutely wild. And he takes so many jumpers. He obviously leads the league in drives every single season, but it's that mid range. It's the 3-point shot that he has working now. I think he's the MVP of the league. Vegas agrees with me right now. He's just been unreal. And for him individually tonight, he was a +1 in 39 minutes. So in 39 minutes, the Thunder did outscore the Warriors with him on the floor. It was the 9 minutes they got outscored by 8 points that he was on the bench.
And I do want to talk Isaiah Joe, because this ties into the big picture stuff, which I love to do. I love to talk big picture. 5 for 10 from 3, 17 points, 6 for 11 overall, 1 assist, 2 rebounds. Doesn't really matter. It's all about the scoring for Isaiah Joe. I will say though, Isaiah Joe doesn't get the stocks to where he's not popping off the page defensively. I would challenge anyone who's really down about this team or just wants to pick me up today. Go watch Isaiah Joe defensive possessions, because he battles his butt off to the point of, with the help you have on the backside and the way he stays in front and contests jump shots, you can still, obviously, this is not breaking news. They're already elite defense. You can still be elite with Isaiah Joe on the court. And if he's going to shoot the ball at the clip he's shooting it in January, this is a huge feather in the cap of Oklahoma City. And what was so impressive about this game, and it goes back to that New York game in the Garden. Both were gaudy shooting performances, 5 for 10 in this game. It was a career night in the Garden, but it's not about the shot just going in, right? And the difference in last year's team and this year's team is that last year's team had the best overall 3-point percentage in the NBA, and that was fun. But how did those threes happen? They happened from Shai is so spectacular that their entire defense collapses on him in the paint. He kicks it out to a wide open 3-point shooter. And in the regular season, let's be honest, you're not chasing down a closeout here. You're not running it down a closeout to the 3-point shooters. You're going to make them beat you. And on extremely low volume with extremely high shot quality, the Thunder led the league in 3-point percentage. When the playoffs get here, though, those same things don't work, because yes, they're still going to collapse on Shai and he's still going to kick it out to you, and you're still going to be open, but you're open for a much shorter window. If you hesitate at all, you're going to be, of course, then guarded, and that changes the entire identity of how this team got threes last year, and it ended up costing them the Dallas series. Whereas that game in the Garden, in this game tonight, you go back and watch these threes. These were not easy shots. These were not layup line corner threes. Like Isaiah Joe hit difficult threes, and he's the only guy besides Shai who hit tough shots tonight. And I don't want to bag on Wiggins, because he's going through a really rough patch right now on the court. He's having a shooting slump. I don't know why I made it so dramatic. He's having a shooting slump on the court right now. But if there is some credence to the Cam Johnson talk, and I've been upfront with you. If I was Sam Presti, I would do it. I don't think that Sam Presti is going to do it. If there is a extra tally in the column for doing the Cam Johnson trade, it's that Isaiah Joe this season has, while he's had cold spots from 3, the threes he is hitting, the threes he is making in this incredible stretch in January have all stemmed from repeatable playoff actions that leave me personally more encouraged that he can be a massive help to this offense in the playoffs. To where if you take away Wiggins, it would suck for team chemistry. It would suck just for this team to lose Wiggins. But if it nets you Cam Johnson, who is another guy that you trust to hit playoff threes, and you get Chet back, and of course you have the best player in SGA on the floor in any series except for maybe against Jokic, that's a team that is a slam dunk title contender without any reservations, without any question marks, without any hesitation. So if Isaiah Joe can keep doing this, that would be incredible. And it'd be incredible no matter if you go make a trade or not. But all that to say, I'm very curious what they're going to do next week. I think that we know what they're going to do next week, which is probably just write it out and get more data points, just as they did last trade deadline. They made a marginal move. They went and got Gordon Hayward. You look at that trade, and we said it in the moment, Brandon, and we were ahead of the curve. That trade was as much for salary relief to go get Hartenstein as it was for on-court production. So in reality, you really didn't do anything at the deadline last year except for clean your books up to go get Hartenstein, which is a massive deal. I don't want to diminish that trade deadline move, but in terms of like on the court, you didn't do a ton. I don't think that on the court you're going to change this team a ton because frankly, it's really silly to demand of this team to touch a 9-loss team. It's really silly, and it's really hard to sell me on like, you should be outraged if this team doesn't go make a trade. They're a 9-loss team without their second best player. All due respect to J-Dub, and I know J-Dub is very active on social media, all due respect to J-Dub, Chet's your second best player. Like, Chet is your second best player, and you've lost 9 games without him. So it's really hard for me to sell you on they have to go do something. But if you did go do the Cam Johnson deal, that'd be pretty sweet. I think that they're just going to ride this out and collect more information because the possibility of moves aren't going anywhere for this team. In the summertime, they'll have just as much of a need to clear up roster spots. In the summertime, they're going to have just as many assets. And in the summertime, they'll have a clearer picture of what they truly do need and more identification points of what they truly do need once Chet Holmgren's back.
Yeah, this team, the old adage that you're a contender if you get 40 wins before 20 losses, you're supposed to be a contender. Well, this Thunder team still has a chance, a little bit more difficult after tonight, but still has a chance to get 40 wins before 10 losses. So that's how dominant they've been with, there's been a lot of talk about, teams having injuries this season. I think that it's kind of been glossed over how much time key Thunder players have missed this season just because the Thunder have won so much, because of the 1 seed and have been dominant. I don't think that anybody looks at it like, hey, they've just been that good despite guys missing. But with Chet missing so much time and Hartenstein and Caruso and other guys missing games as well, they've been this good. I just think that the Thunder want to see this team full, see this team healthy, and they haven't seen for 1 second of playtime how like kind of the entire puzzle fits together of Chet and Hartenstein and Caruso and all these guys and how it's all going to work. So, I expect the Thunder to make some sort of deadline deal, whether it's around the fringes or whether it's like, draft picks for future draft picks, something like that, some sort of small consolidation trade to free up a roster spot, like an emergency big or an emergency like table setter creator off the bench, something like that. I expect them to make some sort of move, but I don't expect some big move, some big swing or anything like that because they want to see this team full. I think when you have the number 1 team in the NBA and you're getting Chet back, I understand if they would want to wait and see what this team can look like full.
And, we talk about old adages all the time. They're old adages for a reason. And the 40 before 20 is a big one. But there's also the old adage of like, you head into a season and you head into a year knowing there's going to be 5 games where I can do nothing wrong. Those 5 games, there's no shot we could lose because everybody's hitting their threes, everybody's executing defensive assignments, and you're just clicking. You could play the 96 Bulls and win because you're that on fire that night. There's 5 games where no matter what you do, you're not going to win. And this was one of those 5 games. No matter what Shai did, he quite literally went for 52 points on 55% shooting. You're not going to overcome the rest of this roster being 0-7 from 3. You're just not going to. And you wouldn't beat Eisenhower High School with a night like this. So you just have to live with the ebbs and flows of an NBA season. And I think you're exactly right. It's the same point that we made yesterday. So if you want more Thunder content, even after 43 minutes, go listen to yesterday's show where we talked about the championship or bust moniker. This team deserves room to grow. These role players deserve room to grow. This is not a make or break season. As much fun as it's been to cover this team, as much fun as it's been for you guys to watch this team and be fans of this team, it's not a make or break season. You have the luxury of time. You have the luxury of getting all the information and making a more informed decision. You know what happens, Brandon, whenever you don't go make informed decisions, especially under the new CBA? You hamstring your franchise and you ruin your future. That's not what this team's going to do. And not to say that a Cam Johnson trade would do that, because I think that a Cam Johnson trade would be great. But I'm just saying you might as well take all the time you can to figure things out. But Brandon, next week will be a lot of fun. And if they trade for Cam Johnson, I'm volunteering Brandon for this because he's came through for me every single time I've done this to him. if they trade for Cam Johnson, Brandon is on an emergency podcast talking about Cam Johnson here on Locked On Thunder. And even if they don't, we'll talk about what the deadline meant for the Thunder in other ways. But nonetheless, Brandon, thank you for joining us. Make sure you go check him out at Brandon Rahbar on Twitter, Dream Team, 1077 The Franchise, and dailythunder.com. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.